Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Mary Fran Bontempo with Kristin Smedley on the Brilliantly Resilient Live YouTube show, Facebook show. We don't know what it is because we're trying, the world tour. That's it, the world tour.
Yes.
And we're trying a bunch of different platforms because everybody's online now. So we're at day, 6 or 7 of quarantine. But today we decided early on in this, Kristin and I, we're going to bring this show to you sometime in the summer or the fall, and it was going to be all pretty and everything. We decided to just dive in. But one of the things we really, really wanted to make a part of this conversation about resilience is that one of the tools in both of our toolboxes is our faith component. And to that end, we have brought to see you today a friend of ours who is very well versed in that world, and we love her, and her name is Esther Hughes. So welcome. Yay.
Thanks for having me.
So we're delighted to have you. You and I met a long time ago. It was probably somewhere between 8 and 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And you were struggling with some health issues at the time. And we were not talking about the faith part of things and the resilience part of things too much. This was kind of like a writing workshop that you went to. And you didn't know my story at that time, and I didn't know your story really at that time. But we've both since shared that with one another and realized that we have the faith component in common, as I know Kristin does too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when I met you, I was like, wow, she's using so much humor, even through those trials and struggles, to bring us all together. And what better thing to use than to heal us with some laughter, And so I think that was my first memory of you, was just the laughter in spite of the challenges and the hardships.
Yeah, so. Well, I found that and I regularly say that's one of my tools too in my toolbox, because even if it's dark humor, and of course it's not applicable all the time when you're in the thick of things, you have to, you accept it for what it is. But there is always at some point a way to turn it on its head. So I guess tell us a little bit about your story and why faith is so important in your life. Esther.
Wait, let me just interject for 1 second. When you and I first met, I'm certain, now you walked away from Mary Fran thinking she uses humor. I'm certain that your impression with me was I was calm and organized and focused on one thing at a time, and that's how I get through.
That's no one's impression of you, ever. Said no one ever.
That was not my impression. What my impression was fun and driven and resilient.
Driven, that's a good word, as opposed to saying Esther takes a deep breath and meditates before picking up the phone when it's Kristin on there. Holy God, here comes the windstorm. That's funny.
It's great. It's great.
Okay, now we can jump in. I just had to make sure that, we were all on the same page here. I am the calm, organized, quiet one. It takes on one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know
opposite day.
This is the bizarro world, in case anybody's wondering. And it really is on so many fronts. Yeah. All right. So tell us how how faith became so important to you and how you experienced it at those different points in what you went through and what your life is like now.
So faith has just always been a part of my life, mostly because I grew up from diapers on, going to church with my family. We, God was just a part of our lives. He just was. There was prayer at the dinner table. We carried our Bibles to church on Sundays. We went to Sunday school. We went to prayer meetings, and I went to Christian school. So it was just there. However, as a young adult, that's when it became mine. It became personal. Because I think when you're a child and you grow up in a Christian home, and mine was very strict, it's just what you do because that's what you do, because you're told to obey and not question. And so what was great about that is we were disciplined and there was structure, and we just always knew that God was there he was there always. Prayer was very much a part of our lives. So it's just always been, but it became mine when I became an adult. And that was when I just really started learning, growing, reading the Bible, listening to different, I call them messengers, whether they were pastors or leaders, spiritual leaders. I just started soaking it all in. And then, you know, as a young mom with 3 little ones, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. And the original prognosis was not good. It was very bleak. And when you have, you know, a baby who needs their sippy cup filled and their diaper changed, and a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old in kindergarten, it's busy.
Mm-hmm.
And we had just moved for the 3rd time in 18 months. And it was just crazy. My husband was building a business. So where do you go in those times? Well, I went to where I always go in the good times and the bad times. And I went to my knees. And I was just surrounded by the most loving community, our church community. I mean, they came to our house to pray. They came to our house to clean.
Wow.
To our house to take care of our kids while I was in surgery or going to chemo. They came to our house with meals and food and groceries. And when you're surrounded by neighbors and friends in the faith community that do that for you, it just solidifies everything I've always believed, but not just solidifies it. It made me grow. And it made me then say, okay, what am I going to do for them when I'm well?
Let me ask you this. Was there ever a time that in that 3 little kids, now you've got this diagnosis, and that was a while ago. It was before there's so much out there now of positive stories. That was back when, you know, it was like, oh, Lord, this is, you know, not a good thing. In all of that and moving and all, were you ever like angry at God and thinking about walking away? Or was it always you just stayed in faith?
Never once. I never once, and this is not, I want to say this is not because of me, this is because of God. And that's my total belief. If it were me, I'd probably be like a wet noodle on the floor, whining, crying, why me? I never did that because to me, it was like, I'm so thankful this is not one of my sisters. I'm so thankful this is not somebody I love. And
wow.
So I went to that, and I don't think I did that. I think that was Christ in me who did that. And so no, never once did I get angry at God. Never once did I think, why me? Never once did I even question it. It was just more of like, okay, now we go forward and we figure out the right medical team. And the entire story would take forever to tell, but I will tell you from the minute I found a lump, I was dreaming. I woke up pressing on the lump. So right there,
Wow.
to me, that was miraculous.
Wow.
Because I was young. I wasn't even doing self-breast exams. I wasn't getting mammograms. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. So to me, from the minute I found that lump, I've always said it was God's hand. Then when I went to a surgeon, she said, this is nothing to worry about. We can wait 6 months. And I said, no, I think it doesn't belong there. Let's just get it out. And I've always said that was God's voice, because me, I would have been like, okay, I'll be back in 6 months.
Yeah.
God's hands. I mean, it was just truly every step of that was truly divine intervention, every step. And, you know, then obviously I survived, and then I knew people who didn't. So then I went to that place of like, why did God spare me when I see other young mothers who aren't spared? So that's when I said, I got to do something, because clearly he spared me for a purpose.
Wow. I didn't know this story. I didn't know this part of your story.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
So
makes a heck of a lot of sense to me, of watching how I know you.
Yeah. So from that point on, I just started sharing my story. I worked as a volunteer for the American Cancer Society for a while, just speaking, going around speaking at different events, breaking strides against breast cancer, volunteer events and dinners. And that was when I was like, oh, I don't know how to speak, so I better get trained. So
Yeah.
then I was like, oh, I better write because people want something after I've spoken. So that was how it all transpired. That was when I
Wow.
started writing books and newspaper articles and stuff like that. So,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, that just makes me even love you so much more, knowing that you had that moment of I must have a purpose, and that it just is so evident. That's why I'm like, oh my God, it's so evident in everything you've done. I didn't know that you had that moment to then cause all of that. That's really cool.
You know, I'm listening to your story, and to that point, Kristin, I think all three of us have had that moment. I think all three of us have made that decision. And I think that's one of the things that we talk about with this whole resilience thing. Like, how do you take those things that have happened and make them mean something beyond your own personal circumstances and pain? Because if that's all it is, it doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't even serve you, really, because holding on to that is just negative. When you can take it and turn it outwards, as you've done, and said, okay, how can I use this for some kind of good? And even more important with the whole resilience idea, not being sure what that's going to mean, but just kind of jumping in and going, well, all right, I guess I need to do this now. Well, okay, I'll do this now. Because those are the things that people seem to need, and those are the things that are presenting themselves to you, and their needs that need to be filled. So it's just that mindset of, how can I take the gift that I've been given through God and turn it outward and serve? And I think that's what you personify, really.
So wait, I got to back up for a second and say, there on my screen, I don't know what everybody else's order of the screen is, but on my screen, me and Esther are right next to each other, and we're like the two opposite ends of the spectrum of a faith journey. Because you're like, I always knew that it was God and he was there and I stayed with him, and I was like, I'm out, you suck, I'm out. I learned about this for 30 years and you're not here. So, and I'm thinking about the footprints poem, like you'd probably be still walking along with God, the footprints together, right? The one set never disappeared. Me, I always say when I do my faith-based speeches, there was one set of footprints, and there's a drag line. He's dragging Kristin along, kicking and screaming. There's sand flying everywhere.
I kind of landed somewhere in the middle of all that. I vacillated between like, screaming and shaking my fists, and then being like, all right, let me see what we can do. So I was the schizophrenic part between the two of you.
You're civil.
Because I'm a Gemini, right? Right, I'm a Gemini. So like, depending on what side of my head was the forefront of the personality that day, that's where I went. I was either shaking my fist and cursing, or going, okay, Jesus, you know what? I don't know. So, but you know what that highlights? The fact that there's no script with this. There's no way you have to react to things in order to be a faith-filled person, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I didn't tell you the rest of the story. We just ended there. I will say, since then, so that was 2002, 2003, between 2001 and 2003, my mom got early onset Alzheimer's in the 90s.
Geez.
And from the time I was married to 2006, she just went downhill fast. And she was an amazing, beautiful woman. Talk about resilient. She was brilliant and resilient. And when she died, that's when I got mad.
Oh, yeah?
Ah, interesting.
Yes, I was so mad at him, and I was embarrassed, and I didn't want to tell anybody. I'm like, I can't tell anybody. Here I've been out on stages speaking about God's love and how great he is, and he is.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am just like, how could you do this? The most beautiful woman on earth and the sweetest. She loved you. She was faithful. So that's when it came. It was when I lost her, the devastation of seeing her go through that. And nobody knew. I wrestled that one alone. And I would just be so angry. I'm like, I'm not even talking to you. Like, he cares. Like, okay, Esther, go ahead, have your little
I broke him in for you. He's
Have
like,
your
oh,
history
good. It's
fit.
another one of her friends. La, 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 la. I'm not listening.
Yeah, so I was being dragged in the sand, kicking and screaming for
Oh,
about
good.
a year there, really, really
Oh,
wrestling.
it's good to know that you're a sand kicker too. Oh, now I like you even more, Esther.
But you know what? Here's the thing. I remember picking up one of our youngest son actually from school. Maybe he was 7th, 8th, 9th grade, somewhere in there. And he got in the car and he was like, Mom, why is God such a secret? And I said, what? And he goes, we really can't talk about God at school other than curse words.
Mm.
And I said, wow. And then we got to just he loved deep conversations, too deep for me. Like,
oh my God, at that age when they start with that, you're just like, I can't do this right now. I know they do. And they do it when you're in the car.
Like, who's thought of these questions? My
Yeah.
grader. So I just remember him saying, Mom, do you ever doubt God? Well, and then he stops himself and he goes, of course you don't, but I do. And I said, oh no. Because he's like, well, you're like perfect. And I'm like, oh. Oh. So he and I
my kids never say that, by the way. My children never say that.
Yeah, me neither.
So I'm just going out on a
he doesn't say that anymore. Little young self. I just remember looking at him and thinking, wow, I've really failed because I'm the opposite of that. I'm the opposite of perfect. And I don't want him to ever think that if he's not, then there's something wrong with him, right?
Yeah.
And if he doubts if there is a God, that he's somehow like condemned to hell. So we had the best conversation and I'm like, no. I have had my doubts. And I said, somehow God always brings me back. And I'm like, I think it's the power of Jesus in me. It's not me. It's never me. I'm way too selfish. I'm way too self-absorbed and I'm way too like
human. You're human.
All over the place.
Yeah.
So, those are like the defining moments and the defining conversations that I've never, ever forgotten, because I'm like, if I'm showing up as somebody who never sinned or as somebody who's perfect to God it all together, then I'm not being authentic.
Yeah.
Because I really don't have it all together. And all you would have to do is ask the 4 people that live with me.
They'll have a big list of how you don't have it all together.
Yeah. And and there's been even more stuff that I can't even go into in the last few recent years that is beyond sad, beyond heartbreaking. And, I think always I do go to my knees in prayer. Always, even when I'm angry at God, I still go to him because I think of my own kids. They get angry with me and I still want them to come to me.
Oh, I like that.
Right? You guys are mothers. You know that. So your kids can be angry 1 second, but does that mean you don't love them?
Yeah, right?
Gosh, no.
Yeah.
So,
it's funny. Dave says to me, my husband Dave says to me, and I'm sure he read it somewhere because he's a big reader of faith-filled, texts and he watches, sometimes I call them the crazy Christian shows because there's some people who are really wackos on those shows. They're out there. But he says he heard somewhere that if you kind of look at all of life as we are spirits having a human experience, as opposed to humans trying to catch into a spiritual experience, it shifts your perspective a little bit. It doesn't make it easier to deal with the challenges of life, but it does kind of help when you can pull back a little bit. And those things, that pulling back takes a lot of time. I know when David was in the middle of his addiction issues, and I was sharing with Kristin the other day, like that was by no means the only thing that was going on in my life. There was a lot of stuff. That was clearly the worst of it. So that's what I tend to talk about. And when you're in the thick of that, you can't fathom how these awful things can happen. But when you pull back a little bit, and as we talked about, use those experiences to reach out and build community and lift other people up, then it kind of gives you a little bit more of a perspective. Like, okay, there is, because it touches you in a soulful place.
Yes.
As opposed to a physical human place. And that to me is, if you can tap into that, that's where the perspective comes a little bit about why there are so many challenges in this life that we live.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the challenges that bring us together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the challenges that bring us closer to God. Even if we're shaking our fist or being dragged through the sand, they ultimately always bring us back to him. Because think of it, if life was just easy, we wouldn't have any perspective at all.
Right.
Right? We would
you appreciate good times because there are not good ones.
Right. Right. And you also look at what you two are doing because of those challenges, and look at the hearts and lives of others that are being touched by your messages, by your work. And if you and not that anybody wants anybody to go through what you've been through.
No. But everybody goes through something.
It's everybody's got their stuff. I remember a girl at work saying that to me years and years ago. She's like, her little girl was born with a heart defect and had to have so many surgeries before she was even walking. And I'm like, how did you? And she's like, everybody's got their stuff. And I'm like, everybody has their stuff. Some people have more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some people wear it on their T-shirts and on their Facebook pages. We just kind of put it everywhere. You know what's funny? When Mary Fran and I got to talking about our similar journeys and faith and all that, and similar toolbox things and all, we were like, who would we be if we didn't share this stuff? You know, because people constantly say to us, "Oh, you're so funny and happy," and we're like, we were not always like this, and we made a choice. At some point, we made a choice, and both of us realized it was rooted in faith. Our lives were rooted in faith, and we came to our choices to rise because faith was a part of that mission. I can't tell you how many people have messaged me, stopped me in a supermarket. They're watching all the brilliantly resilient stuff, all the uplifting stuff, and they'll say, I don't comment, I don't click like, but please keep it coming. It's like people are nervous to acknowledge, they have stuff in their lives. They're nervous and I said, that's fine. That's fine. We're out there to be the face of this and give the message. And I know that so many people are taking it in. They're just not ready to make it part of their profile picture and throw a light and camera on it, you know? And I wasn't either. Oh my gosh, it took me how long to be able to come out with the fact that I had this moment of surrender. My kids didn't even know. And then I thought, what is the matter with me? I came through this with the double diagnosis of blindness. I came through that because I was rooted in faith. And even though I walked away and I was angry, I came back to it. What kind of mom would I be if I didn't give my kids those skills and then talk to them about, like you said, that, yeah, I doubted, I was mad. And I got to tell you, I remember I was rehearsing the TED Talk with your group. You guys were so incredible.
Yes.
And I kept rehearsing. And then I was like, oh, as I was about to go to New York City with my kids and then be on the TEDx platform, I'm like, oh, maybe I should tell them my journey. They didn't know all the pieces of it and my surrender and my upsetment and all. So I sat there and did it for my kids. My boys thought it was the funniest thing they ever heard. First of all, that I was so devastated over blindness because they're like, get over yourself. Because they think us sighted people are like wackadoodles that we don't get blindness. And the second part was my whole thing with faith. They're like, nice. You were screaming at God. That's way to go. You know, like, I'm like, well, I haven't been perfect my whole life, so whatever.
But you know what you're saying? You know what you're saying though, and I heard it a couple of times, and what you were saying and what Esther was saying, and I think this is really important for people to hear. You don't ever arrive at that place of it's all great and whatever Jesus wants and all that. You never arrive there. You go there and then something happens and you go out of it. And then you go back to it. And then you go out of it. And then you go back to it. I think it's really important. Like when you said, Kristin, that we made a decision, we did make a decision to try to put this in a positive light, but you were crying in Costco's parking lot yesterday.
Yeah, in my
So,
Jeep.
yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't. And the other day that my alarm went off and I was like, well, I'm not getting up. What's the point?
Yeah.
So people need to understand that we're sharing this message because we still are working at it. This is a constant work in progress. As long as you're on this planet in this human form, there's going to be an evolution of faith, and there's going to be ins and outs and all, and that's okay.
It's okay.
And that's why I love that Esther, when you said that your church community rallied around you, right? And they did all these things to help carry you through. But then you turned around and did the same thing. Like even just that what is it called? Women in Prayer. What is the Facebook group you started?
American Women Who Pray.
Oh my gosh. That I added my mom to it, because I'm like, right now, starting every morning with that message, because I now that my whole schedule is turned upside down, even the dogs are now sitting and crying in the morning because they're used to everybody hugging them. My whole I used to do the miracle morning and all this stuff, and had scripture stuff and the meditation. Well, it's all blown up now. So, but I do come when I'm on Facebook in the morning. The first thing I go to is that page, just to set my mind in a different mode for the day. And so you're building that community because you had a community that carried you through. It's an incredible full circle thing that really, it speaks a lot to your faith and where faith can take you, that you really do become community driven.
You become community driven because you know what God has done for you, what he's seen you through, what he sees us through. And we so want that for anybody who's going through anything, whether it's this pandemic, whether they're infected by the virus, whatever is their struggle, whatever it is, whatever their stuff is, we want them to know it's okay because God is there. He is always there. And we get the opportunity to get on our knees, and the choice, and it is a choice, to get on our knees and say, you know what, Lord, I can't do this. So maybe you can.
Yeah,
And
that.
I think it was it Mary Fran or Kristin, one of you said that need to surrender. When we can surrender our agenda and just say, okay, Lord, it's yours. That's when God does the best work. And that's what I did last Sunday. I just said, he has literally, I swear, sometimes he beats me over the head. Like, Esther, are you listening? Because I'm so busy talking or praying that I'm not listening.
Yeah.
And for years, I've been wanting to start a prayer community online for years and years. And I will revisit, and then I'll be like, ooh, no, too scary. I already got too many irons in the fire. I can't do one more thing, not one more. And last Sunday, just knowing it was the National Day of Prayer and seeing just the cases rising and hearing the fear and just, seeing the toilet paper flying off the shelf and everything else, right? I just said, today's the day. I just literally woke up, said, today's the day. I'm doing it. And I just did it. I just did it.
Is anybody else hearing those dings besides me?
Fine.
No, but it sounds like the angels. It sounds like God's like
yeah,
blessing it. Like, bing. Yes, that's right. Yay, bing. It was
as opposed to knocking you in the head with a goosh.
Right.
Now he celebrates too. He hits you over the head and he celebrates
with angelic bells. But,
yeah, I think it's incredible.
I think the one thing too, and I know you would agree with this. This is not the same thing as talking about religion, because it doesn't matter what form your faith takes in terms of doctrines and all that kind of stuff. It's really more about connecting on that soulful level with other human beings and serving each other. And even if you don't have a faith per se, in other words, a strict religious faith that you follow, you can still feel that. You can still feel that, that pull towards your fellow human beings and that energy and that, may the force be with you and all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't have to be a particular religious affiliation or anything like that, right?
It's true. It's true. So I started it for Christian women, and I know that I have my Jewish friends in there, and I'm just like, this is who I am. This is, God's word says I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. The Apostle Paul wrote that, and I'm like, okay, then why am I hiding?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to get out there, and I'm just going to go all in, and I'm not going to, and I'm doing it afraid, because I'm like, what am I doing? I don't have time for this. And then of course, that's when God says,
Hey, remember me?
I just
big guy.
one. And so then I'm like, okay, so I'll do it. And it's just been really, really neat, because I feel I'm connected with people I haven't been connected with for years and years. And some of my high school friends, I'm like, oh my gosh, we had so much fun. And there you are,
Yeah.
and so it's been amazing. I actually went and built a website this week. I started an Instagram, and I just said, all right, we're doing this. And we're doing this because our country needs it, and not just our country, the world.
Yeah. I'm so glad you did an Instagram too.
Women who pray. The reason I even did that is so our youngest son joined the Army last April. And it was not a knee-jerk thing. He'd been planning it. He'd been preparing for it. And we'd been preparing for it with him. And nothing quite ever hit me the way that hit me when we stood in the room and saw, I saw his baby face, right?
Yeah.
With his hand raised, pledging to honor and defend and protect the United States of America. And then hear him repeat the Soldier's Creed. I'm telling you, tears.
Oh.
And I wasn't a crier. I wasn't even a crier. And I just like standing in the kitchen, like just pouring out of my face. I'm like, he's boots on the ground now. And so I will say that experience, plus a few others that have been happening over the last couple of years, that have just been those things that try men's souls, right? Those dark, brokenhearted times, have just said, no, we need prayer more than ever. And maybe it's because that's the way I'm feeling, is I need to be on my knees more than ever right now. And I have a son who's serving in the military, and that kind of just catapulted everything big, big, big. So I joined military communities, of military moms and wives and families. And now my whole world has opened up into what they really go through.
Mm-hmm.
Not just our military members, but the families, the sacrifices, the love they have for each other, the love they have for our country.
Yeah.
And there's no politics there. I mean, I'm sure we all have our politics. We do.
Mm-hmm.
It never comes in, because the greater good is our nation. It's freedom. It's our way of life. It's love for each other. It's our everything that our nation stands for. And so when you see these young guys, we got to, of course, attend his basic training graduation and then his advanced infantry. And when you see the faces, you both have sons. You see the faces of our sons, America's sons, and a few daughters. A few were in the infantry, none in my son's group, but and that's when you're like, these guys are so young, and they're defending us, and they're giving up their lives for us.
Yeah.
And what I can do is get on my knees and pray for them. So it was between all of that, being a part of the military community, and my grandfather served in World War I. My father served in the Korean War in the Air Force. I had uncles who served in World War II. And my husband was in the Navy during the Cold War. But nothing quite prepared me for a son.
Yeah.
That was the difference.
Oh yeah, that's different.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
Everything's different when it's your kid.
Yes.
It is. So let's, I guess, wind this up with a few things. First of all, we want to know where people can find you. And again, say the name of the Facebook page again. And then can you give us one or two things to leave us with, that as we move forward in this journey that no one knows where we're going, how do you go through this in a faith-filled way?
Okay, absolutely. So you can find me at on Facebook. The Facebook group is American Women Who Pray. There's also a Facebook page by the same name, American Women Who Pray. And there is a website, AmericanWomenWhoPray.com. And so you can find us 3 ways. You can find us also on Instagram. Start following us on Instagram. Us. It's all of us.
I like that.
All of us. And as far as what we do, what can we do? How can we, during this time of crisis, right? How can we support one another? And more importantly, how can we live faith-filled lives? I am actually in the midst of preparing a guide to get out there to everybody for this purpose. It's just not ready yet.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Make sure you send it to us as soon as it's ready.
Yeah,
we'll do that. So number one, I think, Kristin, you have it. You have it right there. You were talking about your miracle morning. It's blown up, but you can go to Facebook. You can be inspired. There's so many faith communities on Facebook. I was on my church's community last night and I'm like, I didn't even know this was here, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I love this. And I'm going through every post that different leaders of our church had posted. And I'm like, I like it. So there's that. I mean, it's beautiful that we in this time of quarantine, because of the beauty of technology and the amazingness that it's in our hand at all times, we can stay connected. It's checking in with your neighbors. It's checking in. It's being God's hands and feet on the ground right now for Italy, for Spain, for America, for the world. It's being on our knees. You know what? I feel like, as sad as this time is and as scary as it is, and it is so scary, it's sad. Nobody wants to see anybody hurting or dying. We don't. But sometimes I feel like this kind of a pause has reminded us to stop running and start kneeling.
Wow.
So
oh my gosh, I love that.
If there's just one thing you can leave with today, and it's, there's still many people that aren't stopping running because they're working more than ever right now. Our boots on the ground right now happen to be our medical professionals, first responders, government officials, all those who are literally working around the clock, grocery stores, pharmacists, truckers. They're working around the clock, so they're not in this pause time. But for those of us who are, this is our time to get on our knees. And if that's all I leave you with.
It's magnificent. It's brilliant.
It is brilliant.
That was brilliant.
It is brilliant. And we can't thank you enough for sharing your story and your faith and yourself with us today. And I would encourage everybody to get over to that Facebook group, join that group. And I am sure we will talk to you again. Okay, you got anything else?
No, thanks so much for saying yes at the last second. And I said, we want to bring faith into this because it's such an important tool in our toolbox. And literally, you are brilliant to be able to make this real and make this relatable and make it something that people can really rally around. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate that group so much. Thanks so much, Esther.
Thank you both. And I'm keeping you both in my prayers.
Same here.
Same here. Right back at you. So this is going to end us up for the day for another episode of Brilliantly Resilient. You can find us all over the place. Even where we aren't yet, we'll probably be there by this afternoon because we're doing all that stuff. We are posting these episodes. We're on our Facebook community, Brilliantly Resilient. We also have a website, brilliantlyresilient.net. And we will see you tomorrow because we're doing this every day, like it or not.
See ya.
See you soon. Bye.